We all noticed him, the same man, in the same spot, standing in the seasonal aisle near the back. He never bought a thing. He never really moved. He just waited. My name is Len. I work closing shifts 2 or 3 nights every week. At the Dollar Tree, we had just switched to a new layout, a corporate move, with new planograms and everything. Because of that, the seasonal aisle got pushed all the way to the far end of the store, right past the cleaning supplies and the toys, up by the employee hallway. This meant I was back there a lot, zoning the shelves, pulling all the merchandise forward, making it look full even when it wasn't. After 9 p.m., the store got eerily quiet. Just the register lights humming, the cooler compressors ticking, and that steady buzz from the ceiling fixtures that you stop hearing until you are completely alone. At first, after the remodel, it felt kind of nice. It was slower, more predictable. The regulars would come through. Coupon ladies with their binders, parents grabbing party supplies, older folks stretching their social security checks. We would do the last calls over the speaker. We close at 10 o'clock tonight, and the crowd would thin out to just a trickle. I would push my squeaky cart one wheel, always wanted to drift down the seasonal aisle to face up foam pumpkins or plastic leaf garlands. Then I'd sweep confetti and price tags into a little pile with my foot and dustpan them up. This new aisle was long, a straight shot that ended at an end cap of helium balloons tied to a big tank. Beyond that was the door leading to the back hall. If you stood in seasonal and looked toward the front, you could see the cashier lane light, but if you stood at the end by the balloons and looked back, you were basically staring right into the service corridor. He began showing up in mid-September of last year, always in that last hour before we closed, always neatly dressed in a button-down and slacks, and he carried one of those green baskets like he planned to grab a few things on his way out. He would stand in seasonal and just kind of exist there. He wasn't really browsing, not comparing SKUs, not checking barcodes. He was just planted. The basket would rest against his leg and his eyes would be leveled with the shelf, but not focused on anything. For the first couple of nights, I thought nothing of it. People zone out. People wait for rides. I guess he's waiting for Christmas to go on sale. My manager, Lourdes, joked the first week she noticed him. Maybe he likes the fake leaves, I said, because we all make dumb comments. To keep the mood light, a lot of lonely people walk through a Dollar Tree. You learn to just let it pass. But he kept coming back. Tuesday, then Thursday, then Saturday, the last hour every single time. Same place, same complete stillness. He might drift a step or two if I was actively stalking the exact spot where he stood, then he would settle, again like a coat on a hook. The basket always stayed empty. He never asked for help. He never made any small talk. He never followed me with his head when I pushed my cart past him. It was just that straight ahead, eyes up posture, like he was looking straight through the pegboard and out the back wall. After a few nights I realized he wasn't actually looking at the products at all. His body was angled toward the back hallway. I started to notice where my own body was in relation to his. The aisle was long enough that you could pretend you weren't sharing a space. I would take a box cutter to a case of plastic pumpkins, the dull blade catching on the shrink wrap, and I would feel him there like a piece of furniture you don't want to bump with your hip. The cartwheel squealed whenever I turned it. Price tags fluttered when the air conditioner kicked on. He never flinched. Maya, who was on the registers most nights, whispered to me one evening as I brought up a basket of returns. That guy. In seasonal, he was in the lot last night after we closed, just standing by the cart corral. He didn't get in a car, he didn't leave. He waited until Lourdes walked us out. You sure? I asked her. I'm sure, she said. He's not here to shop. It should have been nothing. We get all kinds of people, but the new layout made seasonal a choke point. The employee door was right there. To take out the trash or to hit the time clock, you had to pass by that aisle. I started dragging out any task that kept me near the front of the store. Whenever Lourdes sent me back to seasonal, I would feel my stomach dip like stepping off a curb in the dark. One night, with 10 minutes until close, I took my cart down seasonal and I stopped halfway, giving myself some distance. He was there, positioned halfway between me and the balloons. He didn't have a basket this time. His hands were loose at his sides. He wasn't even facing the shelf anymore. His whole body was angled toward the employee hallway door like he was waiting for it to open. Sir, we close in 10, I said, trying to keep my voice light. He didn't nod. He didn't look at me. The light above him buzzed just a hair louder than the others. They do that sometimes when they're old, and he stood in it like it was a spotlight. I backed my cart out and went to the front. He's back, I told Lourdes, keeping my voice low. She glanced past me, then up at the clock. I've seen him before, she said. He doesn't buy anything, just hangs around back there. We'll make the announcement again. She got on the mic and did the closing line. Thanks for shopping. We're closing at 10 o'clock. Please bring your final purchases to the front. Maya caught my eye, her eyebrows raised. It was 9:55. I took a broom to Seasonal and made a show of sweeping. He didn't move. It's weird how someone can be perfectly still and still feel like forward motion. When you work closing, you learn to read intent in micro gestures, the customer who's actually going to grab something versus the one who's just moving air. He was the latter, but directed. My broom bristles hissed on the tile. He didn't so much as blink. We locked the front doors right at 10 on the dot. It's normal to lock up with a few stragglers still finishing. The front doors locked from the outside, and we walked the aisles before killing the lights completely. Lourdes did a slow lap, calling a cheerful, "We're closed for the night," toward each aisle. And I watched her shadow stretch and collapse as she passed the inn. She reached Seasonal and stopped a couple of feet from him. "Sir," she said, her tone professional but firm, "we are closed. You can come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Nothing." The air felt tighter. She looked over at me and gave me that small nod toward my radio, the signal to call it in. I lifted mine. "Maya, just hang tight a second." Lourdes tried again. "Sir, we're closed. I need you to head to the front." His head turned slow, like a door on a hinge that hasn't been used in a long time. Not mechanical, just deliberate. His eyes were past us, locked on the employees only sign down the short stretch of hall. Then he walked not toward the front, but toward the back. "Hey," Lourdes said, stepping sideways to put herself between him and the hallway, one hand out low like she was talking down a nervous dog. "You can't go back there." He didn't stop. I moved before I even thought about moving. I wheeled my cart fast, the bad wheel shrieking as it pivoted, and I shoved it across the mouth of the aisle to block the corridor. Plastic storage. Bins rattled. He kept coming. "Sir," I said, "you can't go back there." For the very first time he spoke. "I know," he said. His voice was totally normal. "Don't follow me." And then he shoved me. It wasn't a tap, not a brush. It was a full body, shoulders forward drive that caught me completely off balance. My hips smacked into the car. The squealing wheel jumped sideways, and 2 stacks of plastic shoeboxes slid off the top and hit the floor. He cleared the cart in a single step and shouldered the employee's only door. It's supposed to stay latched, but the remodel had the door closer set to light, and maintenance hadn't fixed it yet. The door jumped, then gave. Lourdes swore and lunged for it. I half fell, half ran after him, my thigh stinging where the cart had caught me. "Don't," he barked without looking back, and I heard his shoes on the concrete of the back corridor. Fast and sure. Lourdes hit the code panel with her thumb and missed once, her hands shaking. Then she got it. The alarm cut, then it ramped right back up when the exterior door at the end of the hall opened. The last thing I saw was his neat shirt, disappearing into that dark, followed by the slam of the metal door to the outside. We locked down like we'd been trained. The front doors stayed locked, the lights stayed up, we stayed inside. Maya called 911 while Lourdes gave them the basics. By the time the cops pulled into the lot, it was empty. 2 officers walked the back corridor, checked the exterior door, looked at the latch that always sticks. They pointed at the cameras, and Lourdes had to say the thing out loud that we all already knew. The Seasonal aisle has blind spots. The new layout had moved a shelf into a camera cone, and nobody had adjusted the angle yet. You could see him at the end cap for a second, a clean quarter turn of his shoulder, and then nothing. The back hallway. Camera caught a shape moving, then the door flashing open. No face to pull. They took our statements. They told us to walk in pairs to our cars. "You can file a no trespass order if you see him again," one said, his pen clicking. "If he comes back, don't engage, just call us." I went home that night on pure adrenaline, and I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the small chorus of peg hooks hitting metal. I kept seeing the way he turned his head. It felt so practiced. like a person who'd played out that emotion so many times it had worn a groove in their body. I kept replaying my own reaction. A purple-yellow bruise bloomed on my thigh and made stares awkward. I told myself it was just a guy who shouldn't have been where he was, that we'd scared each other, that it was over. For a few days, he didn't show. Seasonal flipped to more fall stuff, fake hay bales that shed dust, glossy ceramic pumpkins that clinked when you nudged them together. I felt silly for still checking the end of the aisle before I turned down it. I walked the back corridor fast and kept my radio up near my shoulder, my thumb on the button like it was a lifeline. Lords propped the employees-only door with a doorstop during business hours so it wouldn't stick, and so no one had an excuse to shoulder it again. A week later, my shift ended at 10:15. We did the usual routine: count the drawers, sweep the front. Maya waved from behind the glass as I stepped out into the night. The lot was mostly empty, just our last few cars parked in a crooked line. One other car sat a few spaces over from mine. No lights on, engine off, dark windows. I kept my head down and hit unlock on my key fob. I opened my door and, against my better judgment, I glanced across the row. He was in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, posture perfect, staring straight ahead, not at me, not at anything specific, just forward, as if the aisle didn't end and the back hallway continued right through the glass and into the night. Story 2. The break room door was supposed to lock automatically when it shut, but almost every night I would find it cracked open just a few inches. The worst night, someone was on the other side. I was working nights at Dollar Tree part-time while I was finishing school. I had been there about 3 months, mostly doing closing shifts. We had a small team, just 2 or 3 people at most, and sometimes I would be in the back alone while the others handled the registers. The break room I kept hearing the small chorus of peg hooks hitting metal. I kept seeing the way he turned his head. It felt so practiced, like a person who'd played out that emotion so many times it had worn a groove in their body. I kept replaying my own reaction. A purple-yellow bruise bloomed on my thigh and made stares awkward. I told myself it was just a guy who shouldn't have been where he was, that we'd scared each other, that it was over. For a few days, he didn't show. Seasonal flipped to more fall stuff, fake hay bales that shed dust, glossy ceramic pumpkins that clinked when you nudged them together. I felt silly for still checking the end of the aisle before I turned down it. I walked the back corridor fast and kept my radio up near my shoulder, my thumb on the button like it was a lifeline. Lords propped the employees-only door with a doorstop during business hours so it wouldn't stick, and so no one had an excuse to shoulder it again. A week later, my shift ended at 10:15. We did the usual routine: count the drawers, sweep the front. Maya waved from behind the glass as I stepped out into the night. The lot was mostly empty, just our last few cars parked in a crooked line. One other car sat a few spaces over from mine. No lights on, engine off, dark windows. I kept my head down and hit unlock on my key fob. I opened my door and, against my better judgment, I glanced across the row. He was in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, posture perfect, staring straight ahead, not at me, not at anything specific, just forward, as if the aisle didn't end and the back hallway continued right through the glass and into the night. The break room door was supposed to lock automatically when it shut, but almost every night I would find it cracked open just a few inches. The worst night, someone was on the other side. I was working nights at Dollar Tree part-time while I was finishing school. I had been there about 3 months, mostly doing closing shifts. We had a small team, just 2 or 3 people at most, and sometimes I would be in the back alone while the others handled the registers. The break room was tucked at the very end of the back hallway, right by the stockroom. It was nothing special, just a table, a vending machine, a microwave, and some lockers for our bags. Our routine was simple: zone the shelves, sweep up, take returns to the back. The break room was always supposed to be locked when we left. The door had a heavy latch that was supposed to click shut behind you, and you needed a key to get back in. But a few weeks in, I started noticing that every time I walked past it near closing, the door would be cracked open, never wide, just 2 or 3 inches. The first few times, I just pushed it closed and made sure it latched. I figured somebody just didn't pull it all the way. But then it kept happening. I mentioned it to a coworker once and she swore she never left it open. She was strict about locking up. She always double-checked before leaving. We laughed it off, telling ourselves the latch was probably loose or maybe the door frame was warped. Our manager just shrugged when I brought it up. As long as nothing's stolen, don't worry about it. That was the kind of place Dollar Tree was. If it didn't cost money, it wasn't a priority. But the timing bothered me. It never happened in the middle of the day. It never happened when the store was full of people. It was always late, always near closing, and it wasn't random. It was like someone was testing the door when no one was watching. One night, after hauling trash to the dumpster, I came back in through the back door and I saw it again. The door was cracked a few inches. The light was off inside. I pushed it shut and waited until I heard the latch click. I even tugged it twice to make sure it was secure. 5 minutes later, I came back with some returns, and the door was cracked open again. That was the first night I felt real unease. I checked inside, but the room was empty. Chairs in place, lockers shut. Nothing. Missing still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had just been in there. A week later, it escalated. I was taking boxes down the back hall when I heard a faint scrape, like the legs of a chair being pulled across the tile. The sound was coming from behind the break room door. I froze, my hand hovering over the handle. Nobody should have been in there. I knocked. There was no answer. I turned the key and opened it. The room was empty again, but this time, one of the chairs was pulled away from the table, just slightly angled, like someone had been sitting there. I told one of my co-workers about it, and she didn't laugh. She admitted something similar had happened to her, but she swore she heard rustling in the break room once, and when she went in, the vending machine was still humming like someone had just used it. After that, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started feeling watched whenever I walked that back hall, you know, the sensation, like someone's eyes are tracking you, even if you can't see them. I kept my phone in my pocket and stayed up front whenever it was possible. Neither of us wanted to linger back there alone. Then came the night that really rattled me. I was coming from the stockroom, rolling a cart, when I saw the break door standing open halfway, not just cracked, but wide open. The hall was dark except for the exit light above the back door. I stopped cold. Inside, the light was off, but I heard the faintest sound. It wasn't breathing this time. It was softer, almost like shoes scuffing against tile, then fabric shifting, as though someone was adjusting in a chair. I flicked the light switch by the doorframe and I stepped in. Nobody was there, but the chair that had been tucked neatly against the table during my last break was now pushed back. Not far, just enough that it looked used. That night, I told the manager flat out, "I think someone's sneaking in here." He brushed it off. We'd see them on camera. That was when I found out the break room camera had been down for maintenance for weeks. No one had thought to fix it. Another coworker backed me up, saying she once grabbed her purse and swore she saw someone crouched by the lockers. When the light came on, no one was there. She chalked it up to being tired, but hearing my story made her pale. We both started avoiding the room unless we absolutely had to go in. We'd wait for each other if it was possible, but you can't always avoid the back hallway, not when you're working a closing shift. One night, near the end of my route, I was walking past when I saw it happen with my own eyes. The break room door, which had been sitting flush, slowly eased itself shut, like someone inside had just nudged it closed. My stomach dropped. I was alone in the back. My coworker was up front, ringing out the last customer. I stood there frozen, staring at the door. Then I forced myself to move. "Who's back there?" I called out. There was no answer. The only sound was the soda machine humming faintly through the door. I grabbed the box cutter from my pocket, my hand shaking. I pushed the door open. The room was dark. I flipped the switch. The light buzzed to life and I heard the faint scrape of something shifting behind the lockers. Before I could react, a man lunged out. He was wearing an old, filthy Dollar Tree vest, like it had been stuffed in a locker for years. His eyes were wild, his hair greasy, his whole body reeking of sweat and stale smoke. I stumbled back and nearly dropped the box cutter. He didn't swing at me, didn't say a word. He just bolted. He barreled past me so fast my shoulder. Usually, the last engines fade away quickly. The silence that follows is comforting, the sense that the day is officially over. But when I walked out this time, I noticed a car sitting dead center in the middle of the lot. Everyone else drove off, but it didn't. None of my co-workers drove a sedan that color or shape, and I would have recognized it. It sat idling with its lights off, faint exhaust drifting from the tailpipe. The windows were fogged just enough to blur the inside, but I could still make out the outline of someone in the driver's seat. When my eyes lingered too long, the silhouette seemed to shift, almost like they were angled toward me. At first I brushed it off. Maybe they were waiting for someone finishing a late shift at one of the other stores. Maybe they were just resting before a long drive. I didn't want to overthink it. I got in my own car, locked the doors, and pulled out my phone to scroll for a few minutes before driving home. But every time I glanced up, the other car was still there, still idling, the driver still sitting perfectly still. 10 minutes passed, then 15. My phone screen dimmed and locked itself. The sound of that faint, steady engine carried across, the lot louder now that everything else was quiet. My co-workers were gone, the building was dark, and yet, the car hadn't moved an inch. The driver hadn't adjusted the mirror, shifted in the seat, or even lifted a hand. It was just stillness. The longer I sat there, the heavier the air felt. The lot suddenly seemed smaller, like that one vehicle had pulled all the edges in. I kept checking my side mirrors, my rear view, half expecting them to roll up behind me. The way they were parked made no sense or center, directly facing the store doors, as though they were waiting for someone to come out. That's when I noticed it clearly. The figure wasn't looking forward at the wheel. They were turned slightly sideways in the seat, their body angled toward the entrance. From where I sat, it looked like their head was tilted, locked on the dollar tree doors I had just walked through. The engine gave a low sputter, then steadied back into its soft idle. The car itself didn't move. My stomach sank. I locked my doors tighter, checked the handle, and pretended to shuffle through my bag. I thought about calling my manager, but the store was already closed, and nobody would answer. For a second, I considered getting out, but something about the way that driver sat, completely motionless and waiting, told me not to. Finally, I started my car. The headlights swept across the lot, throwing light over the hood of the other vehicle. Still no reaction, no flicker, no flash of a phone screen inside. Just that rigid silhouette turned toward me. As I pulled forward, I saw it clearer. The figure was definitely angled, not casually slouched. Not on their phone, but sitting stiff, turned deliberately in my direction. Their face was obscured by the glass, but I could feel it. They weren't looking at the road. They were watching me. That's when the panic kicked in. My pulse jumped, my hands gripping the wheel tighter. I looped toward the lot exit, trying not to look again, but as I swung past the last pole light, their car suddenly lit up. High beams, a blinding flash that filled my entire windshield, then dark again. 1 second, but it felt completely deliberate, like a message. I see you. I didn't hesitate. I floored it out of the lot, my tires squealing against the asphalt. For a brief moment, relief washed over me until I checked my mirror. Headlights burst on behind me. The one-sided sedan roared out of its space, pulling onto the road tight to my bumper. The next few minutes were a blur of pure panic. I sped down side streets, cut across empty intersections, but no matter how hard I pushed, the car stayed locked on. They didn't honk, didn't swerve, didn't try to pass. They just followed, steady and close, like a predator keeping pace. At one stop sign, I had to brake hard, and they came right up behind me. The impact wasn't loud, just a sharp jolt as their bumper tapped mine, enough to make my teeth clack together. That was the moment I knew it wasn't random. Whoever they were, they wanted me scared, and it was working. I blew through the next turn, cutting sharp until I reached a busier road. There were street lights, other cars, late-night traffic. I merged fast, praying for witnesses, for safety and numbers, and just like that, the sedan peeled away. One turn, and its headlights vanished into the dark. I didn't go home right away. I circled aimlessly for almost an hour, checking my mirrors, convinced they'd appear again. Only when exhaustion finally beat the fear did I pull into my driveway, my headlights still on, my pulse still hammering. By morning, I had almost convinced myself it was over until I walked back outside to my car. Something was tucked under the windshield wiper, a folded piece of paper damp with the morning dew. I unfolded it with shaking hands. In thick block letters, it said, "See you after work." The engine may not have been running this time, but the message was perfectly clear. Whoever was in that car knew exactly who I was.